ootas Gerhardit, aga kohe hakkavad tulema.
Aga siis äkki tõesti alustame, et ma teen väikse sissejuhatuse. Okay, welcome to all in our symposium first day. We have this kind of discussion today. It's also some kind of format what is quite new in our tradition, but when topic need, then we make this kind of thing. And today's actually idea is to make some kind of brainstorm. And brainstorm about a very specific actually topic in Estonian culture. And it is a topic of mathematics, of music. And our goal is actually to develop some kind of learning tool, what is actually for university level, but also what elements is also possible to use in high school level. And of course, some kind of handbook actually. I imagine some kind of handbook. It is not only learning tool, but handbook more, and maybe it's possible to incorporate also some exercises or something with this. And actually, this is now the environment what I suggest to make this. It guarantee two things. It is wiki books, when you know this wiki system, wiki environment. It is one sister project of Wikipedia, for example. It is the same company and the same actually software what is used also for this kind of. And wiki books mean that it is actually wikiõpikud in Estonian, but it is free books for very different topics. I can show this mathematics of music maybe is one of this kind of new etap, new level, new stuff after this kind of compositional learning tool for gymnasium. What we have actually made with Indrek 2 years now, and it was actually a project what was supported by Estonian Education Ministry, and it was project of Tallinn University. And actually goal was to make absolutely new conception, new tool, what is useful for using in high school level, very normal high school level. And we are tested this learning tool also in this Koidula Gymnasium, in what Indrek is working. And it was some kind of logical development also in this, that we are integrated very last topic here, also some kind of mathematics of music, Muusikamatemaatika. It comes out and from this a little, but now our goal is not to be only in high school level, but to develop material what is useful for professionals, for university level, and also some elements in high school level. In this page now I am collected a little things here. Here in Kirjandus, it is literature, is this kind of Google Drive link, and when to open this, we will see lot of materials. It's actually copyrighted materials, but sorry, I am silent in this moment about this, but not because we use this and we need some communication platform. So it is not founded openly in some Google system. So I think that, okay, we are silent in this, but it's this kind of secret place. But only not this company know what they have here. And I don't know, now I ask Hans to make some kind of overview about materials, what are in English language or also in German language in every word. And also a little to analyze and a little to make some references, refers, yeah. What kind of materials there are and what are best sides of these materials and what are not so best sides. So, but we wait now Hans to make this, but I can show. Here is actually I listed two books. Actually, it is Garrett Loy Muusikamatemaatika, what is two very big volumes, and it is actually maybe Hans make also some. Tere Mart, rõõm, tule lähemale. It is Garrett Loy Muusikamatemaatika, and here is only index of this book, to see what kind of topics possibility can also consist our this handbook. And the second is the Benson Music Mathematical Offering. Yeah, it is actually open search in internet also. But here is also some kind of topics. Okay, and here also something. So, and I suggest our goal today is actually to collect ideas when we talk about this kind of handbook of Muusikamatemaatika or of mathematics of music. What kind of form, what kind of content would be the best? It's my short introduction now. Have somebody questions?
Mainly pointed on Schoenberg. Kas see enamasti on nagu see Arnoldide analüüsimise jaoks või seal ennem oli Drive'is Arnoldi nimi käis seal?
No, it is not only for analyze. Actually, our goal now is to develop something, a tool for composition, and also it's possible also to use this in analyzing whatever music, not only Arnold Schoenberg music. Okay.
Well, I think this discussion can start if we know, yes, as you said, what is the purpose of this book, because as Giovanni have showed us already in the lecture, was it on Monday? Yes,
yeah,
in the school, yes. That actually, I mean, the relations between music and mathematics are very different, and actually you can use mathematics for very different purposes. So I think we first should think why we need such a book and what is the purpose of us. Is it addressed to composers or is it addressed to a wider audience? Or you see, because I mean the book for composers and the book for larger audience, just to attract larger audience using this topic. I mean, these books are all different, I think.
I think our goal is to develop some kind of learning book or handbook for university level, for actually for students who are, for example, in Hans lessons study, for example, sound synthesis, and for example, yeah,
yes,
because we don't have this kind of discipline.
I see, but still the
mathematics of music.
Still the question remains that, I mean, is it just to, I mean, offer kind of knowledge so that yes, we have such things and maybe it's interesting to study these things, or is it still or has it still kind of go? I mean, because the topic is huge. As you have said, we have here 5 books, but there are many actually.
Maybe if it's for students, so students know what they want to do with the information, but there's so much of it that they don't need all of it. So it has to be easy to navigate for them. But,
yes, one thing is, for example, how the mathematics can be used for composition, and there are a lot of materials we can use, and then we can somehow organize this book and show how mathematics can be used in composition. And even there we have very different topics already. Another thing is acoustics, for example. I mean, the sound itself can be, I mean, if you describe it, this is a different story. I mean, you are using mathematics actually to describe acoustics, which is one of the branch of physics, which is quite different. At the same time, the acoustic properties of sound, I mean, if you formalize them, you can use this knowledge for your composition as well. So I think that, I mean, there are very many different paths you can follow. So what is actually our path, or what is the main aim? Is it still somehow related to composition, because Schoenberg society is mostly related?
Not mostly, but in this moment, because we are focused in this.
But if we are thinking of school students, then probably they are not necessarily interested in composition, but maybe something else. Maybe something else. So I mean, maybe they are somehow interested in music, but maybe they see their main specialty in the future, mathematics or information theories or whatever. But they are interested to connect the activity to music somehow, and then mathematics offers a possibility. But again, this is a rather different aim. Okay, so
of course,
that's
very good question.
very many different topics, but for me it's always well. First, I want to know what I am doing. What is it? I don't have to know it very exactly, and it is also possible that during making this book, actually, the goals are changing and we discover new things, and it's all okay. But still, it's important for me to know what I'm doing. Basically, what is my main goal, and then I can work out some strategies and so on, how to achieve that.
But maybe because Hans is now here, can we now to continue so that Hans makes some kind of overview, some books, what materials there are, and after this maybe we can also answer to Kerry's questions better. Hans, kas sa tahad näidata ka mingisuguseid show some?
Tahan ka midagi.
Okay, but now I introduce Hans from the block, controller, and logist, and he makes some kind of, ma võin assisteerida sind, mida teha ma teen.
So first of all I have to connect my computer because there are some materials.
You can show also this material.
Yeah.
No, this is, for example, this Benson. Benson. Yeah.
So
maybe we can show here are this Garrett Lois. Ma võib-olla annan siit niimoodi kuskilt. You know it?
I do actually.
Okay. It's Garrett Lois. It's not original copy.
Siin tuleb ju see.
See on sellega, okei. Äkki me saame isegi, aga võib-olla me peame siis mõlemad.
Lülita ümber selle sisendid. Saame mõlemad korral.
Ennast vapustada.
Võtta siin masinat. Selle. Ja lülitame seda sooksi. see my masin asustab. Interesting. Siis
sa pead lähemale tulema kuidagi või äkki ma pean ikkagi välja lülitama selle teise?
ma proovin lähemale. Siin on aku pühi. noh, tuleb. So good afternoon. So I will from the beginning say I have not something like an fully prepared paper or something like that. Just I want to speak freely about some things, problems, and about what is connected between music and mathematics, and also to show some books I have seen. I have not, of course, completely read them because they are quite something like compendia or something like more like an encyclopedia. So and also I'm a composer. I'm musicologist, but of course I guess that I'm not a mathematician. So in that sense that I know, of course, essential things about mathematics. So of course this mathematics what more or less we learn in every country until to high school level. So but of course it depends really really high so the higher level mathematics is not so often for me in my practice necessary. So also knowledge about arithmetic and algebra what we have from middle school or from up to high school. Of course, it is for the most cases it is quite enough, and so this is one thing. So of course there are, as I think Andros also introduced, there are two books what we gave here to the audience, and of course I think one is Dave Benson, Music and Mathematical Offering. So for me it seems so that they have both contradictory concepts. So I think the Benson's book is very intensive in mathematics. I think it seems that the author comes from the mathematics and explains the mathematics very detailed, mostly very detailed, and then links it with mathematics. So this is the viewpoint. And but the other book, Gareth Loy, Muusikamatemaatika. So even this is some Muusikamatemaatika. So of course this is a 2-volume book, and of course it's a compound word for music and mathematics. So I think this term is created by the author Gareth Loy, and it's not a term I have heard before. So, and maybe he is thinking something like we have a mathematics for musicians, and so there is also, of course, a lot of equations, a lot of mathematics. But it seems for me that the source is the music, and then we have musical issues, and then we go to the mathematics. the concept is the other way around. So, of course, and first what we can do and have a look to the table of content. And of course, generally, there is a lot of things in what are related to music and to mathematics at the same time. But of course, the focus or the issue is often quite different. So, and for my understanding, I think we can say there are some, that's for tomorrow, but I take some text documented, so maybe just for pointing up out some. So we have music, or the field of music today is very wide, and of course, and I think we have to clarify that a little bit, and then I want to make a choice. I want to make a choice what for me as a composer and musicologist is maybe the preferred topics I want to learn more for me, and want to dive more into the mathematical situation. So, and other topics maybe I am not so mainly interested for some reasons. So, and generally, if we see what we have as composers, if you are now maybe students, they are start to study composition at university level today. So generally we find two fields. One is now like the let's say classical composition. So that means you have scores, instruments, and so on. So this is one thing. So, and the other thing is of course much more younger in history is electroacoustic composition. So, or sometimes it's even referred as electronic composition, but of course this is a slightly even historical difference between the terminology. I don't want to dive in this topic. So, and there, of course, we have we talk about more or less about sound. So, and sound generation, and also sound treatment. If you have some given sound and you change it, so, and of course, for the first thing, of course, we are connected to some, of course, tradition. So, of course, the composition way it is of course maybe symbolic. You write symbols in a score, and then you have to agree with your interprets or with some certain way of tradition, and the interpret will play the music to you, and you agree or not agree, or correct your scores if you think that is not that what you intended while listening to that. But in electroacoustic composition, of course, you take electronic devices. Of course, nowadays for 95% or more, it will be a computer. So maybe 20 years ago it was not like this. There was electronic devices, standalone devices, what we maybe connect to each other. So and it so we deal with the physical behavior of sound or something like that. So, and of course that are both two different. What is here a mistake? Okay. So it's two different, of course, approaches to, and of course, and we cannot say that that one is more connected with mathematics or one is less connected to mathematics. Both they are connected strongly to concepts what we know from the classical mathematics. Of course, if we say physical behavior, of course, physics, sound, of course, itself is a physical phenomenon, as we know. So there is no general difference if an acoustical instrument play a sound or a loudspeaker play an electronically generated sounds. Both will evoke sound waves what travel at least to our ear, we listen, and so ear in our brain is interpreting, and then we listen it as an artistic result or as an artwork or as a composition or whatever. And of course the generally physics as a discipline, of course, is cannot be the modern physics cannot be seen without the mathematical background. I think that's obvious to say. So in every physical textbook you see equations, and every equation, of course, is based on mathematical research, and most we can say, of course, the mathematical ideas, they are much older, and that we can say mathematical conceptions often they are discovered and described, and maybe later in physics we find some applications, practical applications for that. For instance, the differentiation and integration. Of course, that was invented before they were found that these mathematical techniques are very useful to describe our physical world. So, but generally, together in connection with electroacoustic composition, a student more or less has to learn a lot of physics and of acoustics and of the relationships, and so sometimes it could be integrated in different subjects like acoustics or like sound synthesis, whatever. And all this is connected that we are very close to the acoustical reality of sound. If we compose classically, then we are more far from that. So of course today in the computer age, of course there is a discipline what is of course rather complicated and also very highly mathematical. This is digital sound processing. So this is even a subject what they very deeply teach at technical universities all over the world, and but also we also partly see that how to talk about these topics for electroacoustic composition, because because today most of our devices, I will keep out that if we have like a analog modular synthesizers, what is quite a movement back to some vintage renaissance of things what was the main electronic sound generation devices in the 60s, in the 70s, and also in the 80s. This is a different thing, but of course the digital sound processing is of course very deeply also, it is connected to describe how a computer can generate sound, how a computer can treat sound, change it, and record and send it out. So, and all these processes, of course, they are connected to mathematics. So, but then I will establish here some. Okay, it's too large. Some third level. So, of course, there is a third level that we can treat more as a also higher level. What is maybe let's tell it as a compositional level. So that we as composers think about, we have some ideas, and we want to realize the ideas. And of course, in classical or traditional composition, so one, of course, the most used method is to use your intuition, or so you have some experiences, and then of course you create composition. So, but of course, even your intuition is something what sometimes it could be clearly described by mathematical rules, sometimes not. And but of course, it is a level what is before that we fix it out to create a score, or to make some electronic realization, order sounds in some order, and project them in sound systems with maybe a huge amount of speakers, or only stereo, or whatever. And of course, on the composition level, so this is just of course some advantage of the 20th century, that we just more focus, that we have even some logical tools, or even because logic is nowadays also formalized in a mathematical way, we have so mathematical ways how to organize our composition, or we can compose with it. Of course, even in the 20th century, it was not nothing general, because if we go more back in Middle Ages, of course, these isorhythmic motets and these techniques, there was a very tradition. What was their composition was very much based on logical decisions, and mathematical tools. But of course, later this was not anymore at overall so important. But generally, I don't want to talk about history here. Generally, this compositional level, of course, it is more or less what I then, or what will be marked by the term algorithmic composition. So, for making a choice for me, what is for me as composer the most interesting, important thing, just on the compositional level, I will see that, of course, or I have seen that in these books about music and mathematics, they in a certain way repeat also this digital sound processing topics. But for me it's a different category, of course, and so that is, of course, what you have to know how sound works, but it is nothing what is not at all on the stage of composing. Of course, it is the state of composing if you compose electronically, of course, electronic processes like we know, filtering or convolution or whatever, or modulations that we multiply two waveforms to each other and something strange, something other. What we use, of course, then we use that. But of course, more or less, of course, we have nowadays digital tools where we don't have all the time to think about the mathematics behind. Yeah. But on the compositional level, for to be creative, there I think I'm interested in some mathematical models or algorithms or logical structures, because then I feel that I have to experiment, and from the results of some experiments it will lead to some interesting structures what I will at least form out to composition. So, but now let's go back to the book, and I think all the second volume, that is more or less that's what we normally call digital signal processing. So here the first topic is digital signals and sampling. So musical signals, of course, he talks about complex numbers, of course. Of course, if you want to dive more into what is like Fourier transformation and transform and spectral composing inside the spectrum, then of course it is needed. So spectral analysis and synthesis, convolution. So convolution is something like a multiplication and steadily addition and shifting some material steadily further and further and further. Of course, filtering, maybe filtering is most used that we have on our music or everyday music equipment. We can filter out some frequencies. But of course, he offers the technical base for that, and of course, wave equation, and of course, acoustics, sound synthesis, dynamic spectra. And of course, it is also related to composition, but on a different level. So, but but if we see in the first volume, of course he even starts, in the first volume he starts quite with quite basic things, and even there are a lot of chapters they have quite less or no equations, so that I think Loi's book is also more or less mentioned that for introduce for readers they have not so much experiences with mathematics, and maybe he want not to bore his audience with too much of equations, and prepares the ground so about what represents music. Also he talks about the waveform and notation is a representation of music, and he talks about pitches and scales. So of course now there we are really inside the topic, and of course let's go back here. Even on some maybe fourth level, it's hard to connect that level, but of course in case if we operate with pitch and composition, in electroacoustic music there are often, if you deal with noise and sounds like that, then the traditional pitch that we describe with note what would be put on a 5-staff line, this conception what is connected even to psychoacoustical issues, that we are able to reduce spectral sound to just one frequency, or what is often, but not all the time, the lowest frequency what represents in a certain way what we describe traditionally as high and low. So we have a spatial representation for sound, so for describe visual, that what we listen. So that is the issue of pitch organization. Of course, for the majority of traditional music, the issue is quite clear. We have 12 pitches in an octave, and so there is, of course, how they are they're organized. Of course, there were also some sort of historical development what leads to the so-called 12-tone equal temperament scale, and there is also a lot of mathematics behind.
But in Xen harmonic music there are more temperaments. So
yeah, of course, I come to that. So but of course in the 20th century, if I talk about Western music, it's a completely different thing about music from different outside European cultures, like in Middle East and India, where we have completely different scales. So, and this topic I connect with this type of music what we nowadays label with the term microtonal music. So, and in Western music tradition, there was in Europe and also America, composers came to the conclusion that, of course, there is a possibility if you can have a freely tunable instruments like string instruments, that there are, of course, a lot of more possibility what we can find between two adjacent keys of piano keyboard. And the other consideration was that, of course, the 12-tone equal temperament scale is a compromise. And it works for a sort of music as we have at classical romantic music. Works perfect. There's no better solution. But of course, just for instruments with fixed pitch, there could be that you feel a lack of cleanness of certain intervals, or if you have heard a major triad tuned absolutely just as it has its best solution, it's the most consonant solution, then of course you clearly understand the difference between that what normally a piano tuner will tune you in a traditional piano. But of course, more or less we have learned this, that every major triad is vibrating a little bit, and we more or less we have learned to reject that, to switch off that, to don't recognize that. So, of course, our senses are working like that. We have a lot of information here for our senses, and we have to filter out some things, otherwise we become crazy. So, but of course, from time to time, so the focus of interest changes for creators, and then we of course, if we reject something what has worked really very well, and we of course leave that, we have not anymore that advantage of the 12-tone temperament scale that we can arbitrarily transpose, but we don't have to compose music what has to every time to modulate and transpose to every. We can do it differently. So, and the problem so we can have intervals. They are not playable on an ordinary piano. We can have intervals. They are also smaller than semitone, and there is a lot of very interesting possibilities how we can the pitch space organize alternatively. So, of course, we do a lot of mathematics in classical music theory. So the traditional pitches like C, D, F, G, A, B, C, and of course, or even the 7 diatonics, and with the chromatic keys, we have the 12 of them. Of course, and we do a lot of really mathematics what we have learned, so that we can calculate by heart major triads, and we calculate intervals up and down and everything. So that it's really things what we can really good also describe mathematically. So, but and of course, even if we think about the music theoretically exercises what we do normally on a piano, we play major scales in all 12 different keys, and or of course it is something what somebody likes, or a lot of people hate that if you have to transpose a piece to another key, and then the patterns on the piano and the finger are completely different. But of course, while singing normally is not a problem unless you have not a pathological absolute listening, of course. But generally, of course, there is these are things, they are highly and very accurately described by numbers and mathematical features, of course. But if we now say we dive into a new worlds of pitch organization, then of course we have a problem. All the traditional mechanisms, what makes us easy to calculate musically, they disappear, or we have to, try to. Of course, we could try to adjust that, but it's incompatible. And that is the reason for pitch organization. We have to go and to calculate this mathematically. There is, of course, there is I don't see any other way. So otherwise, of course, for every pitch organization system, you have to make a standard how to name that letter and then to learn it, how to calculate it. And the other thing is, of course, we have for traditional music we have a huge heritage of music, so we know what chord, what combinations are more important, what not. But for these new pitch spaces, so nobody says how you have to do it. So we have to be as universal, as general that we because that we have all the possibilities how to find interesting chords or scales or subscales in the system. So we need mathematics for that. There's no way about that, away from that. So of course, and also we see here, if we go here back to Garrett Loy, so I think he also here he talks about physics, so geometrical basis of sound. So I think okay, here he starts here we see more these things what I summarize with algorithmic composition, but I think here was also microtonality. It was in the third chapter. Here we have it. We have the chapter about musical scales, tuning, and intonation. Of course, the topic is very large, and of course it is. I think it's quite a short overview about that, and of course, but for starting to learn about it, it's good to take that because, of course, generally the book is from which year? It is not the newest book, and maybe if writing a similar book today, I think the focus will be changed. And but of course, all what was 10 years ago valid is also valid today, and so and of course, if we go here. Generally, we can see here in the Benson's book, there is a lot of similar topics, but he talks more about mathematics. Okay, he talks about Fourier theory, so about the things, and so here we have also the critical bandwidth. This is related to psychoacoustics, how we listen and what is possible to listen, what not due to the anatomic behavior of our ear. So our ear is very good tool, and some features like differentiating different voices in a huge orchestra piece, and understanding different lines or different melodies, and that it's hardly to do even nowadays. Maybe the computer became better and better, but it's even it's wondering how would our ears work. But even as everything, so there is even limitations to certain things, and that's. But of course, and here, of course, here this is the chapter about the microtonal things. So, and of course here digital signal processing and even practical things like what is a wave, what is an MP3 file, and I think that is of course general. It's all the whole computer is connected to mathematics, but from the composer's view, it is not that what is in the primary interest. Of course, wave and MP3 these technologies are now developed. They are working fine. There are a lot of engineers have worked how to make the best compensation to have a small file, but really no differences between uncompressed. The other things, of course, that is here mentioned. But of course, I understand if the idea is to have a book about music and mathematics, it seems that the authors want to make the whole circle about all to catch nearly everything, and so for us, I think from a compositional, we have to pick out these things what are interesting, and then maybe also learn more mathematics. So, and of course, let me add just a little bit more about the microtonality, because there is the issue. I just have not seen any really comprehensive book about microtonal scales. And as I ask composers when I attend in November the Microfest in conference, it was a small conference in Helsinki, they even claimed that there is not yet a book that really comprehensive can describe all these things, and for that there is this wiki page. It's a huge compendium about things, and there I have read about terminology, but I have never read before and have really not much found in other sources. I'm not I don't really exactly know about the history of this wiki, but there was, before this Wikipedia and things came, there was people interested in these topics, and they had a mailing list. The tuning or microtonal tuning mailing list was a huge mailing list there in the 90s, and there they developed concepts, and of course it seems to be some alternative music scene, more or less in the United States, and of course this is something like it is from the composers. It's a mixture of composers. They are interested in have more background in jazz and popular pop music or whatever, electronic pop music, whatever, and they are interested in organizing pitch differently. And on the other hand, there are classically modern, so academic composers. They come from the other side, and they are interested in using different scales. Of course, for all of these composers, even everybody, I think, feel it. Okay, there are hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of different scales. So, of course, maybe I can find that there's a Scala archive, Scala